I recognize the honourable member for Coquitlam, Malawi.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, the Riverview Lands can rise like a phoenix and be part of the solution of our current opioid crisis and the significant gap in the mental health and substance abuse disorder treatment system that we currently have. Honourable Speaker, Riverview is situated on a 244-acre site located on the eastern slope of Coquitlam Mountain, overlooking the Fraser and Coquitlam rivers. It is a unique space of peace and tranquility, situated at a crossroads between Royal Columbian Hospital, Meadow Ridge Hospital, Surrey Hospital, and Eagle Ridge Hospital. In 1904, the province purchased over 400 acres for the construction of Riverview Hospital and the neighboring Colony Farm. And located near the junction of the Fraser and Coquitlam rivers, it was believed that the natural setting would help in the therapeutic treatment of patients. By 1913, the first permanent ward, the Mayo Chronic Building, opened its doors, and the new ward was quickly filled to capacity with over 900 patients. At that time, Honourable Speaker, Riverview was recognized as a model of psychiatric health care, one of the most progressive asylums in North America, and it even received funding from the Rockefeller Foundation. Riverview continued to expand, and by 1956, there were over 4,300 patients housed on the site. Over time, though, governments did recognize that with the changing understanding of mental illness, the treatment models needed to change as well. And Riverview was dismantled piece by piece over several governments for the next 30 years and finally officially closed in 2012. Now, the physical space known as Riverview is still relatively whole, but supports and resources for those in our province living with mental illness, well, those supports, they're full of big holes, big gaping holes, Honourable Speaker. Just as the buildings on the Riverview site are deteriorating, so are those in our province living with mental illness and substance abuse disorder. We are in the midst of a severe opioid crisis that just won't let up, and our collective neglect and lack of vision and planning for mental health care has resulted in a different form of demolition by neglect. I know that every single member of this House has heard stories of those in our communities from around the province who have fallen through these mental health care cracks. We are currently in the midst of this crisis. We've lost 914 lives just last year. And Centre Lawn, this massive building in the middle of the Riverview site, has only shuttered 4 years ago and could be readily available to help in the midst of this crisis. Coquitlam's own mayor, Richard Stewart, who sat on the other side of this legislature between 2001 and 2005, has made a very public plea to us, those of us who took an oath to serve the public. He made a plea that we consider repurposing Centre Lawn as a resource for the current opioid crisis, Honourable Speaker. Here is an existing resource readily available to help out in a crisis, and it's just sitting empty. Honourable Speaker, we see communities like Maple Ridge struggle with addressing homelessness in their community. We see our police forces and our criminal justice system having to cope with those who suffer a range of psychiatric illnesses. We know we are using our criminal justice system instead of our healthcare system to house those with mental illnesses. We've heard from the Union of BC Municipalities representing local governments from all over this province who have spoken as one voice that Riverview needs to be repurposed with a 21st century model of mental health and substance abuse disorder care. Local governments see the value of having this amazing resource provide help and refuge for those who need it most, because local governments are seeing firsthand what happens when the services, treatments, and supports that these people need are just not available when they need them most. Honourable Speaker, the most amazing thing about this vision for Riverview is that the residents of Coquitlam would welcome the opportunity to have Riverview as a haven, a place of calm, a place of trees and rolling lawns, a place of wellness for those in need. As I prepared my comments for today, I had the opportunity to reflect on some of my constituents who would have benefited from a revitalized and modernized Riverview. I think of Jason, a 21-year-old young man who came to my office at the behest of his mother last August. She had told me that Jason had been addicted to oxycodone and now has turned to heroin. He broke his ankle when he was just 19 years old, and the physician who treated him provided him with some oxycodone for pain relief. The prescription, Honourable Speaker, was for 150 pills. Needless to say that Jason liked the way the medication made him feel, and when the prescription ran out, he began to pursue street drugs. Jason, at the time, in August, had been living on the streets. He was stealing. He was doing whatever he needed to get his hands on more drugs. And when I first saw Jason, Honourable Speaker, I thought he looked like a survivor of the Holocaust. He was gaunt, pale, and his eyes had a vacant look. He hadn't eaten or showered in days, and he hated what he had become. And my heart broke for Jason because he was so filled with self-loathing at how addiction took him away from his life and from his family. I spent that afternoon making phone call after phone call, scouring the internet, looking for some resource for this young man. He was sitting in my office on an August afternoon. He was still high and needed to be in a safe place where he could be starting a road to recovery. Honorable Speaker, Riverview has the potential to be that place. I represent the constituents of Coquitlam-Millardville. Riverview sits in the eastern border of my riding, and I can, with great confidence, declare in this House that revitalizing Riverview as a dedicated place for mental health would be welcome in my constituency. The city of Coquitlam welcomes it, and so do its citizens. For over 100 years, Riverview has served British Columbians living with mental illness, Honorable Speaker. It has a history as a leading edge and progressive mental health institution. And yes, it does have a history of some pretty barbaric treatments that we now understand to be ineffective and even harmful. Psychiatric treatments have come a long way since the 50s and 60s, Honorable Speaker, and we know, as a province, we need a real comprehensive mental health strategy and a center of excellence for mental health care and substance abuse disorder treatment. And we should be reinvigorating Riverview as a center. It has the potential and the opportunity to save lives, and it's right in the middle of my community. And Honorable Speaker, I'm ready to move this into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.